Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of Last Hope Station, Earth's furthest deep space research facility, watching distant stars pulse through the quantum interference that had plagued their sector for weeks. 20 years of studying deep space phenomena hadn't prepared her for what the interference meters were showing. Patterns that defied known physics, rippling through space like waves in a cosmic pond. "Doctor, you need to see this." Marcus, her quantum communications specialist, hadn't left his post for 18 hours straight. His voice carried the weight of someone who had witnessed the impossible. "The interference, it's not random. It's a message." Sarah rushed to the communications hub, her heart pounding against her ribs. The holographic display showed cascading patterns of quantum fluctuations, but now they were organizing themselves into recognizable patterns, mathematical constants, prime numbers, and then, impossibly, English words. "Help us. We are the axiom. Our civilization is dying." The message repeated, each iteration more refined as the quantum signal stabilized. Sarah's hands trembled as she initiated first contact protocols, procedures that had been theoretical until this moment. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen of Last Hope Station, representing Earth. We receive you, axiom." The response came instantly, the quantum signal crystallizing into a three-dimensional projection of what appeared to be pure energy given form. The being's body was a complex matrix of light and data, more mathematical equation than flesh. "Dr. Chen, we apologize for this unconventional contact." The entity's voice resonated directly in their minds, translated through the quantum field itself. "We are what you would call a post-biological civilization. 10,000 years ago, we transcended physical form, uploading our consciousness into quantum matrices." Sarah exchanged glances with Marcus, whose fingers were flying across his console, recording everything. "How can we help?" she asked, knowing that humanity's technology was primitive compared to a civilization capable of quantum ascension. "We are being destroyed by what you might call a quantum plague," the axiom entity continued. "It corrupts our consciousness matrices, degrading our quantum coherence until we simply cease. We have lost 60% of our population in 3 standard months. Our greatest minds cannot stop it because we no longer understand biology." Sarah frowned. "Biology? I don't understand. You're a quantum civilization." The entity's form flickered, a visual representation of what must have been frustration or despair. "The plague behaves like a biological virus, but in quantum space, we have forgotten the fundamental principles of biological immunity, of cellular defense mechanisms. Our civilization's transformation was so complete that we abandoned these studies millennia ago. But you still remember. You still understand the basic building blocks of life itself." Marcus let out a low whistle. "They're saying our primitive biological knowledge might be their only hope." Sarah's mind raced with the implications. Humanity, barely able to reach beyond their solar system, might hold the key to saving a civilization so advanced they had transcended physical form itself. The irony was almost poetic. "The plague spreads through quantum space," the axiom continued. "Your non-quantum ships, your biological-based computers, they might be immune. We offer all our knowledge, all our technology, in exchange for your help. Will you aid us?" Sarah straightened her back, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just first contact. This was a chance to prove that humanity's understanding of the most basic principles of life itself held value even in an age of quantum transcendence. "Send us everything you know about this plague," she said. "I'm contacting Earth. We'll need our best virologists, immunologists, and quantum physicists. And we'll need ships, old ships, without quantum tech." The axiom's form brightened. "Thank you. But please hurry. We estimate we have 30 Earth days before the plague reaches critical mass. After that." Sarah nodded grimly. "We'll be fast. Humanity knows a thing or two about fighting plagues. Marcus, get me a direct line to Earth Command. And find Dr. Isabella Martinez. She wrote that paper on quantum biological interfaces last year. Tell her we're about to put her theories to the test." As Marcus rushed to make the calls, Sarah turned back to the observation window. Somewhere out there, an entire civilization was counting on humanity's outdated biological knowledge to save them. Sometimes, she reflected, the oldest knowledge was the most valuable, a thought that would prove prophetic in the days to come. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Last Hope Station transformed from a quiet research outpost into the front line of humanity's most important mission. As Sarah coordinated with Earth Command, she couldn't help but smile at the irony. Humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy might not be their advancement, but their memory of where they came from. The mission to save the Axiom was about to begin, and it would require everything humanity had learned since the first single-cell organism fought off a virus in Earth's primordial seas. Sometimes, the most powerful knowledge wasn't about how far you'd come, but about remembering where you started. The emergency conference room at Earth Command Headquarters buzzed with tension. Holographic displays showed the quantum plagues spread through Axiom space, beautiful but deadly patterns of corruption consuming what had once been millions of sentient minds. Dr. Isabella Martinez stood before the assembled leaders of Earth's scientific community, her dark eyes intense as she gestured to the displays. The Axiom's quantum architecture is similar to a neural network, but operating on a scale we can barely comprehend. This plague, it's behaving exactly like a computer virus would in our systems, except it's alive. Admiral Y. Chen, Sarah's father and head of Earth's Deep Space Initiative, leaned forward. Alive? How is that possible? Because it's not just a quantum phenomenon, Isabella explained, pulling up complex diagrams. It's a hybrid, a biological virus that somehow evolved to propagate through quantum states. The Axiom never saw it coming because they've completely forgotten how biological systems work. They literally cannot comprehend what's killing them. Dr. James Patel, Earth's leading virologist, nodded slowly. Looking at these patterns, it's remarkably similar to how certain retroviruses behave in biological systems. The way it spreads, mutates, adapts. Exactly, Isabella said. We're seeing the laws of evolution playing out in quantum space. The Axiom thought they'd transcended biology, but they've actually just given it a new playground. Admiral Chen stood up, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. So how do we fight it? Isabella shared a look with Dr. Patel before answering. We need to develop a quantum biological vaccine. Something that can teach their quantum matrices how to recognize and fight the infection, just like our immune systems do. But here's the catch. We can't use quantum computers. They're vulnerable to the plague. We need to do this the old-fashioned way. Old-fashioned? Someone scoffed. You mean analog computers? Biological research labs? Exactly, Isabella confirmed. We need ships and facilities that are completely free of quantum technology. And we need people who remember how to work without AI assistance, without neural interfaces, people who understand the fundamentals. Admiral Chen's face broke into a slight smile. I know just the place. The Genesis Project. A murmur went through the room. The Genesis Project was Earth's backup plan, a collection of ships and facilities deliberately kept primitive in case quantum technology ever failed. Most considered it a waste of resources. The project has 3 research vessels equipped with traditional biological labs. Chen continued. No quantum tech, no AI, just microscopes, centrifuges, and human intuition. And I know the perfect person to lead the mission. Dr. Maria Santos, 70 years old and recently retired, was tending her garden when they found her. She had been Earth's foremost expert on viral evolution before quantum computing made her method seem obsolete. Let me get this straight, Maria said, setting down her watering can as Admiral Chen finished explaining. An advanced quantum civilization is being killed by a biological virus that learned to evolve in quantum space, and you need my outdated methods to save them. Exactly, Chen replied. The Axiom's quantum evolution made them forget the very fundamentals of life itself. They need someone who remembers. Maria looked at her garden, where she had been studying natural selection in flowering plants as a hobby. When do we leave? Within 48 hours, the research vessel Pasteur was ready for launch. Its labs were filled with equipment that would have looked at home 50 years ago. Optical microscopes, analog sensors, and manual sequencing devices. Its crew was a mix of retired experts and young scientists willing to learn the old ways. As Maria settled into her lab, she ran her hands over a familiar microscope. Sometimes she mused to Isabella, who would be coordinating between the biological and quantum research teams. We get so caught up in advancing that we forget why certain principles worked in the first place. Evolution, natural selection, immunity. These aren't just biological concepts. They're fundamental laws of existence. Isabella nodded, watching as more equipment was brought aboard. The Axiom thought they could transcend these laws. Instead, they just gave them a new domain to work in. And now, Maria said, her eyes twinkling, they need us primitives to remind them of what they've forgotten. Ironic, isn't it? As the Pasteur prepared for launch, Maria looked at her team. Retired experts and young learners, all ready to prove that understanding the basics of life itself was never obsolete. They had 25 days to save a civilization that had forgotten its own origins. First rule of biology, Maria announced to her team as the ship's engines rumbled to life. Life finds a way. Even in quantum space, our job is to make sure it finds the right way. Let's get to work. The Pasteur lifted off, carrying humanity's oldest knowledge to save the galaxy's most advanced civilization. Sometimes, Maria reflected, you had to go back to basics to solve the most complex problems. And humanity was about to prove that understanding the fundamentals of life itself was the most advanced knowledge of all. Space twisted around the Pasteur as it approached the edge of Axiom space. Through the viewing ports, the crew could see the quantum plague's effects. Beautiful, terrible ribbons of corrupted space-time, shimmering like auroras gone wrong. Dr. Maria Santos peered through her microscope at a quantum-isolated sample of the plague, carefully contained in a specially designed analog chamber. What she saw defied conventional biology. Structures that seemed to flicker between physical and quantum states, following patterns that were both familiar and alien. It's remarkable, she said to Dr. James Patel, who was recording observations with pen and paper. The safest method when dealing with a quantum biological threat. Look at this replication pattern. It's using quantum entanglement to copy itself, but the underlying structure is pure virus. Like a virus learned to exist in two states at once, James agreed, sketching what he saw. Physical and quantum simultaneously. No wonder the Axiom couldn't fight it. They'd forgotten how to think in biological terms. The ship's intercom crackled. Dr. Santos to the bridge. We have contact with an Axiom enclave. On the bridge, a hologram of pure energy coalesced, an Axiom elder named First Light. Unlike the previous communications, this projection showed signs of degradation, pixels of consciousness flickering in and out of existence. The plague accelerates, First Light said, its voice carrying static. We've lost contact with 3 more enclaves. Our attempts to quarantine through quantum isolation have failed. Maria stepped forward. Show me your quarantine methods. The displays filled with complex quantum algorithms, beautiful mathematics that meant nothing to the virus. You're thinking like a quantum civilization, Maria said. But this enemy speaks an older language. We need to implement biological quarantine protocols. Biological. First Light's form wavered in confusion. But we have no biological form to quarantine. Your consciousness may be quantum, Maria explained, but it's still patterned on biological principles. Your thoughts still flow like neural networks. Your memories still consolidate like synaptic connections. We need to treat your quantum space like a living organism. Isabella Martinez, who had been quietly analyzing data, suddenly straightened. That's it. We're not just fighting a virus. We're dealing with a quantum immune system that never developed because the axiom skipped that evolutionary step. Maria's eyes lit up. First light, how did your civilization transfer consciousness to quantum form? Was it a gradual process? No, the entity replied. When we discovered quantum transcendence, we transferred our entire civilization within one generation. We saw no need for intermediate steps. And that's your vulnerability, Maria said. Natural evolution would have created quantum antibodies, quantum immune responses. By jumping straight to pure quantum existence, you never developed natural defenses. The next 12 hours were intense. Maria and her team worked in their analog labs, using old-school scientific methods to understand how biological immunity might translate to quantum space. Young scientists learned to rely on observation and intuition rather than AI analysis, while retired experts shared forgotten techniques that proved invaluable. Dr. Lisa Chen, a quantum physicist who had insisted on learning basic biology for the mission, made the breakthrough. "Look at this," she called out, pointing to a Petri dish where quantum-infected material was interacting with a biological sample. The virus can't maintain quantum coherence when exposed to certain cellular processes. It's like the complexity of biological systems disrupts its quantum state. Maria's eyes lit up. First light, how did your civilization transfer consciousness to quantum form? Was it a gradual process? No, the entity replied. When we discovered quantum transcendence, we transferred our entire civilization within one generation. We saw no need for intermediate steps. And that's your vulnerability, Maria said. Natural evolution would have created quantum antibodies, quantum immune responses. By jumping straight to pure quantum existence, you never developed natural defenses. The next 12 hours were intense. Maria and her team worked in their analog labs, using old-school scientific methods to understand how biological immunity might translate to quantum space. Young scientists learned to rely on observation and intuition rather than AI analysis, while retired experts shared forgotten techniques that proved invaluable. Dr. Lisa Chen, a quantum physicist who had insisted on learning basic biology for the mission, made the breakthrough. "Look at this," she called out, pointing to a Petri dish where quantum-infected material was interacting with a biological sample. The virus can't maintain quantum coherence when exposed to certain cellular processes. It's like the complexity of biological systems disrupts its quantum state. Maria studied the sample. "Of course," she breathed. "Biological systems are too chaotic, too complex for the virus to maintain its quantum physical duality. We don't need to kill it. We need to force it to choose a state. But how do we apply this to beings of pure quantum energy?" James asked. Isabella, who had been quietly working on quantum biological interfaces, spoke up. "We teach them to be messy. The axiom made themselves too perfect, too ordered. They need to relearn a little chaos." Maria smiled, remembering something from her gardening days. Life isn't about perfection. It's about adaptation. "First light," she called to the waiting axiom elder. "We need to teach your people how to be a little less perfect, how to embrace chaos in controlled ways. Are you ready for that?" The entity's form stabilized slightly, as if gathering resolve. "We are ready. Our perfection is killing us. Teach us what we have forgotten." As the team began developing their unprecedented treatment, part vaccine, part evolutionary crash course, Maria reflected on the irony. The most advanced civilization in known space needed to learn from Earth's microbes, from the chaotic dance of biological evolution that they had thought themselves beyond. The real work was about to begin, and it would require everything humanity had learned in its long climb from single-celled organisms to space-faring civilization. Sometimes the oldest lessons were the most valuable, and humanity was about to teach those lessons to beings of pure energy. The Pasteur's old-style laboratory had transformed into something unprecedented, a hybrid of biological and quantum research where centuries-old microscopes sat beside quantum containment fields. Dr. Maria Santos watched as her team prepared their first attempt at quantum immunotherapy. "It's like teaching someone to dance who's forgotten they have feet," Dr. Lisa Chen said, adjusting a quantum field generator built using deliberately primitive technology. "We have to remind the axiom how to move with chaos." First light's deteriorating quantum form observed from a safe distance. More axiom consciousness clusters had been lost in the past day, each death sending ripples of distortion through quantum space. Time was running out. "The process we've developed is based on how biological immune systems learn," Maria explained to First Light. "We're going to introduce controlled chaos into a small section of your quantum matrix, just enough to force your consciousness to adapt, to develop quantum antibodies. Like a vaccination," First Light said, its voice carrying new static. I remember reading about such things long ago." Isabella Martinez monitored the quantum biological interface she developed. "This will be uncomfortable," she warned. "Your consciousness will need to partially decohere, to become less perfect, less ordered. Are you ready?" First Light's form flickered. "Proceed." The team activated their hybrid system. Through specially designed sensors, they watched as controlled patterns of biological chaos were translated into quantum space, introducing minute imperfections into First Light's perfect quantum matrix. The effect was immediate and violent. First Light's form exploded into fragments of pure energy, each piece struggling to maintain coherence. Alarms blared as quantum fluctuations threatened to overwhelm the shielding. "Hold steady," Maria commanded, her eyes fixed on the readings. "This is normal, like a fever in biological systems. The consciousness is learning to fight." For 3 hours, they watched First Light's quantum form struggle with the induced chaos. Slowly, incredibly, new patterns began to emerge. Quantum structures that looked almost like biological antibodies, but operating on a scale of pure energy and information. "It's working," Isabella breathed, watching the data stream across her screens. "The consciousness is adapting, developing quantum immune responses. First Light, can you hear us?" The scattered fragments of quantum energy began to coalesce, forming a shape that was different from before, less geometrically perfect, but somehow more resilient. "I feel strange," First Light responded. "Less ordered, but stronger." The sensors confirmed it. The quantum plague couldn't maintain its hold on First Light's newly adaptive consciousness. The hybrid biological quantum immune response was forcing the virus to decohere, breaking its hold on the quantum matrix. "We need to move quickly," Maria said, already preparing the next phase. "First Light, can you connect with other axiom enclaves? We need to distribute the treatment before the plague spreads further." But there was a problem. The axiom's quantum communication networks were too perfect, too ordered. They couldn't transmit the controlled chaos needed for the treatment without breaking down. They needed another way. Dr. James Patel, who had been quietly working on an alternative, spoke up. "What if we use the plague itself against itself? Its quantum biological nature means it can spread through the axiom's networks. If we can modify our treatment to propagate the same way." "A viral vaccine," Maria finished, understanding immediately. "Using the plague's own transmission methods to spread immunity." "James, you're brilliant." The next 18 hours were a blur of activity. The team worked to modify their treatment, making it self-propagating like the virus it was fighting. They had to make it strong enough to spread through quantum space, but controlled enough not to cause a different kind of damage. Young scientists worked alongside retired experts, combining new theories with old wisdom. They used ancient viral research techniques alongside quantum field theory, creating something that had never existed before: a quantum biological vaccine that could teach beings of pure energy how to be imperfect enough to survive. As they prepared to release the modified treatment into the axiom's networks, Maria gathered her team. "What we're doing here goes beyond medicine," she said. "We're teaching an entire civilization that perfection isn't the goal. Life, all life, whether biological or quantum, needs variation, adaptation, even chaos to survive. Sometimes the oldest lessons are the most important ones. First light, its consciousness, now a beautiful blend of order and controlled chaos, addressed the human team. We thought transcending biology meant leaving behind its rules. We were wrong. You have taught us that the principles of life itself transcend form. We will not forget this lesson again. The treatment was released into the quantum networks. Now all they could do was wait and watch as humanity's understanding of life's most basic principles raced to save a civilization that had thought itself beyond such things. As quantum space itself seemed to hold its breath, Maria remembered something she'd learned in her first year of biology. Life finds a way. Now they would see if that held true even for life that had evolved beyond flesh and blood. The quantum realm surrounding the Pasteur rippled with unprecedented patterns. Through the ship's viewing ports, the crew watched in awe as waves of their hybrid treatment spread through axiom space, leaving transformed consciousness clusters in its wake. What had once been geometrically perfect structures of pure energy were becoming something new. Quantum matrices that pulsed with controlled chaos, like digital hearts learning to beat. Dr. Maria Santos hadn't slept in 36 hours, but she couldn't look away from her screens. The data told a story of evolution happening at quantum speeds, of an entire civilization learning to dance with disorder. "Look at this," Isabella Martinez called out, pointing to her quantum readings. "The plague can't maintain its coherence in the transformed networks. It's like trying to write on water. The surface is too dynamic now." Through their quantum communications, they could hear the voices of countless axiom consciousness clusters as they underwent their transformation. What had started with first light was spreading exponentially, each transformed consciousness becoming a carrier of their quantum vaccine. "We're getting reports from across axiom space," Lisa Chen announced, her voice thick with emotion. "The plague is breaking down wherever it encounters the transformed consciousness patterns. They're not just surviving, they're thriving." First light, now a constant presence in their communications, manifested in the lab. Its form was dramatically different from their first meeting, less crystalline, more fluid, with patterns that seemed to shift and flow like aurora borealis. "Your treatment has done more than save us," First Light said, its voice carrying new harmonics. "It has awakened something we had forgotten. We feel more alive." Dr. James Patel, analyzing the latest data, nodded in understanding. "You're experiencing quantum evolution. Real evolution, not just predetermined changes. Your consciousness patterns are learning to adapt naturally, just like biological systems do." "We thought perfection was the ultimate goal," First Light mused. "We sought to transcend the messy complexity of biological existence, but you showed us that complexity, adaptation, even imperfection. These are not weaknesses to overcome. They are the essence of life itself." Maria watched as more data poured in from across axiom space. The transformed consciousness clusters were beginning to experiment with their new states, creating quantum structures that merged the precision of their old existence with the adaptability of biological systems. "They're like children discovering they can dance," Isabella observed, smiling as she watched the patterns unfold. "All that power, all that knowledge, and they're just now learning to improvise." The ship's sensors detected a new phenomenon. The transformed axiom consciousness clusters were beginning to interact with quantum space in ways never seen before. They weren't just existing in quantum space. They were evolving with it, creating new possibilities with every interaction. "We offer you something in return," First Light announced. "Our understanding of quantum existence, combined with your biological wisdom. Together, perhaps we can explore what life truly means, in all its forms." Admiral Chen's voice came through the ship's communications. "The quantum plague has been eliminated from 98% of axiom space. The remaining pockets are being naturally neutralized by the transformed consciousness clusters." Mission accomplished. But Maria knew this wasn't just about accomplishing a mission. They had helped forge something entirely new. A civilization that combined the precision of quantum existence with the resilient adaptability of biological life. As the Pasteur prepared for its journey home, Maria stood in her lab one last time. The equipment around her, microscopes, Petri dishes, handwritten notes, had helped save one of the most advanced civilizations in known space, not despite their simplicity, but because of it. "The universe has rules," she said to her team as they packed up their equipment. "Not just the laws of physics, but the deeper principles of life itself. No matter how far we advance, no matter what form we take, those principles remain. Sometimes we need to return to basics to remember what they are." First Light's final message to Earth was broadcast across all channels. "We called you primitive, and you showed us wisdom. We thought ourselves beyond biology, and you taught us its eternal truths. The Axiom will never forget that the future of life lies not in transcending its fundamental principles, but in understanding them more deeply." As the Pasteur broke orbit, its crew watched the transformed Axiom consciousness clusters dance through quantum space, no longer perfect crystals of pure thought, but vibrant, evolving patterns that merged the best of both worlds. They had come to save a civilization and ended up helping it be reborn. In the end, humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy wasn't their technology or their knowledge, but their understanding of life's most basic truth, that perfection lies not in escaping chaos, but in learning to dance with it. The Axiom had transcended biology only to rediscover its wisdom, guided by the very beings they had once considered primitive. It was a lesson the galaxy would not soon forget.